The gravel crunched under my boots as I stepped out of my pickup, the door still half open, a deed in one hand, and a half-eaten breakfast taco in the other. I hadn't even caught my breath when a voice pierced the morning air like a siren at a library. "You're trespassing on private property. I've already called the cops." A woman in zebra-striped leggings and a visor wide enough to block the sun stood on the sidewalk, pointing at me like I'd just kicked her prize poodle. I leaned over the truck's roof, boots firmly on my own land, and said, "Ma'am, I am the cops." That was my introduction to Brenda Caldwell, president of the Pine Haven Homeowners Association, self-appointed guardian of suburban perfection. I'd come to check the back acres I'd inherited from my late uncle, hoping for a quiet weekend of measuring fence lines and maybe eyeing the old barn for a future project. Instead, I got a screaming match with a woman who thought I was invading a neighborhood I legally owned. Not just in theory, every inch of this land was mine. I'm Sheriff Jack Harland, 12 years on the job in Mason County, where I've handled everything from bar fights involving feral cats to a chase with a souped-up golf cart. Nothing prepared me for Brenda's wrath, though. She didn't know me from Adam because I wasn't wearing my badge, just jeans and a flannel shirt. She charged over like she'd trained with the Secret Service, waving a laminated clipboard like it was a royal decree. "This is HOA monitored land. I can issue citations." I raised an eyebrow, took a bite of my taco, and pulled out my wallet, flipping it open to my sheriff's badge. Her eyes narrowed like I'd flashed a fake ID at a dive bar. "You expect me to believe that?" she snapped. I could have laughed, but her tone wasn't just ignorant, it dripped with control, the kind that thrives on power. That set off alarms louder than her screeching. "I'll have the sheriff here in 5 minutes, she barked, jabbing at her phone. "Make it 4, I said, chewing. "He hates waiting." She stormed off, yelling into her phone, scaring a pair of plastic flamingos on a nearby lawn. I leaned against my truck, scanning the land. It should have been woods and deer trails, but now it was rows of cookie-cutter beige houses, manicured shrubs, and identical mailboxes. Somewhere between my uncle's will and today, Weston Builders had turned my wild acres into Pine Haven, a gated community straight out of a catalog. 5 minutes later, Deputy Sarah Vega rolled up in her cruiser, spotted me, and gave a mock salute with a grin. Brenda barreled toward her, pointing at me like she was casting a spell. "That man's trespassing. He threatened me, and he's eating in public, violating our cleanliness standards." Sarah blinked. "Ma'am, that's Sheriff Jack Harland." Brenda's jaw dropped. "Impossible. I've worked with him for years." Sarah smirked. "I've known him 5 years. That's his face." Brenda didn't flinch. "Then I'm filing a complaint with the state police." "You think badges make you above the rules?" Sarah glanced at me. I shrugged. "Arrest me now or later?" Brenda's face went redder than her geraniums. "You'll hear from the HOA board," she hissed, stomping off like a toddler denied ice cream. It would have been funny if her certainty didn't gnaw at me. She acted like she owned the place. After she left, I walked deeper into Pine Haven, Sarah trailing, clearly amused. "This your uncle's land?" she asked. "Yeah, all 30 acres. Or it was." I frowned. Something's off. I never sold it, never signed a thing, but there's a neighborhood here. That evening, back at the station, I dug into the deed and tax records. The county still listed me as the owner. Weston Builders had built Pine Haven without permits, zoning changes, or inspections. The paperwork was flimsy, a house of cards. I called Weston's office. Their receptionist promised a legal team callback. 3 days, no response. So, I went back the next weekend, this time with a clipboard and a folding chair. I planted myself on my sidewalk, jotting notes on every violation: unmarked utilities, fire hydrants too close to driveways, unlicensed security patrols. Brenda appeared in 20 minutes, hands on hips. "Back again, inspecting my land," I said, not looking up. "This is private community property. You're not authorized to sit there." I flipped to a highlighted deed clause. "Actually, I could build a skate park here. You're on my easement." Her eye twitched. "You think this is funny?" "I think it's tragic," I said, "especially for folks paying HOA fees to someone who doesn't own the ground." She opened her mouth, closed it, and walked off, less confident, more rattled. This wasn't just about me. If someone forged documents to build a community without my consent, that was fraud, maybe worse. And if Brenda was involved, even tangentially, fines wouldn't cut it. As I sat there, watching kids bike past houses on my soil, I noticed orange flag stakes beyond the oaks. Weston was planning phase 2. If they'd pulled this once, they'd try again. I was the only thing in their way: sheriff, landowner, and Pine Haven's most wanted man. The town library smelled like dust and nostalgia, a comfort despite the mess. I sat with land records, permits, and folders, piecing together a puzzle. Someone had approved Pine Haven, declared it theirs when it wasn't. A clause buried in zoning papers stopped me cold: conditional annexation upon silent owner default. If an owner didn't respond to development inquiries within 6 months, the land could be annexed under an emergency housing rule. Problem was, I tried to respond. My uncle's will took 9 months to process due to a county backlog. No one had notified me of a proposal. This wasn't an oversight, it was deliberate. Later, I drove to the untouched woods at Pine Haven's edge, where pine and earth still smelled like my uncle's land. A rusted boundary marker stood firm, but nearby, orange flags signaled more construction. As I turned to leave, Mrs. Clara Thompson waved from her porch. "Sheriff, got a minute?" I sat with her, and she dropped a bombshell. "I know you didn't sell this land. My son's a surveyor. He showed me a map 5 months ago that didn't match the community layout. Why not speak up?" I asked. She sipped lemonade. "Here, talking back gets you fined. Brenda calls it disrupting community harmony." She chuckled, then handed me a green binder thicker than a dictionary, stuffed with HOA minutes, emails, and photos of Brenda policing lawns like a dictator. It was a goldmine. Brenda had turned her presidency into a fiefdom, intimidating residents into silence. People weren't spineless, they were trapped. Moving was costly, fighting was draining, so they paid fines and stayed quiet. Back at the station, Sarah waited with iced coffees and a grin. "How's enemy territory?" "Worse than I thought," I said. "They're planning phase 2, and Brenda's either complicit or too deep in her HOA fantasy to see she's on stolen land." Sarah flipped through the binder, snorting at a fine for an unapproved inflatable pool. "What's next?" "I'm crashing their board meeting," I said. "They're public. I'm a concerned resident off the land." 2 nights later, I walked into the Pine Haven clubhouse in jeans and a collared shirt. The room buzzed with plastic chairs and forced smiles. Brenda stood at a podium, gloating. "Fines are up 23% this month." I waited until community concerns opened, then raised my hand. Brenda squinted. "Yes, you." I stood. "Jack Harland, sheriff of Mason County, legal owner of this land." Silence. Brenda laughed nervously. "A joke." I unfolded the deed. "Not even a little. As landowner, I'm the landlord of this clubhouse." Murmurs spread. "I believe Weston Builders acquired this land questionably. If so, this HOA, its fines, and decisions may be invalid." A man stood. "The HOA's not legit. Possibly built on fraud," I said. "You've been manipulated." Brenda's voice rose. "Meeting adjourned." "No," Clara Thompson said, standing. "It's just starting." Brenda's face said it all, her control was slipping. Next morning, I met Walt Peterson, a real estate attorney who smelled of pipe tobacco and looked like he'd seen every scam since the gold rush. I laid out the deed, Weston's papers, and Brenda's HOA nonsense. He sighed. "They didn't even try to hide it. This annexation clause isn't binding without notification. And this contract? Forged signature." I whistled. "So I've been robbed. In broad daylight, with county help or ignorance," Walt said. It was infuriating but validating. Weston had stolen my land with loopholes and fake papers, hoping I'd miss it. I left with a plan, patience, and a touch of mischief. At the station, Sarah was in the evidence room when I walked in, grinning. "You look like trouble," she said. "Creatively lawful trouble," I corrected. I outlined a sting. We'd offer Weston the remaining acres under a fake seller name. If they bid, we'd catch them in another fraud, proving intent. Sarah grinned. "Finally, a sting not involving baiting drunks with pizza." We crafted a fake identity, shell email, and emails posing as a distant relative selling the land. Within 2 days, Weston's rep wanted a fast-track purchase. Too easy, fe'd done this before. Meanwhile, Brenda went door to door with flyers calling me a dangerous impersonator sheriff sabotaging Pine Haven. The grainy photo of me in my yard, labeled Trespasser, was straight out of a tabloid. Residents whispered. Some feared her, but others, spurred by Clara's binder, asked questions. At the diner, a group cornered me. You own the land? Every inch, I said. The HOA's fake. Based on my lawyer's findings, yes. Built without consent. Fines and fees may be unenforceable. A voice piped up. Can we get our money back? I'll try, I said. But first, I proved this was deliberate. Brenda escalated, installing cameras, issuing curfews, and fining someone $200 for overly festive Halloween decor. But cracks widened. More residents attended meetings, questioned rules. When I stood outside the clubhouse with a Know Your Landlord sign, half the neighborhood listened. Then a black SUV pulled up. A city official stepped out, grim-faced, and handed me an envelope. New deed filed this morning, transferring the land to Weston. Signed by you. I opened it. My name, my address, not my signature. Brenda smirked nearby. Your story's falling apart, Sheriff. I held up the deed. Forging a sheriff's signature is a felony, right? The official blinked. File a report. Already have, I said. Sarah fast-tracked forensic analysis, proving the signature was fake. The courier, traced to a Weston contractor, confessed he'd been paid to deliver and vanish. We were close, but needed the final blow. We set a sting meeting with Weston's rep, posing as the fake seller. The restaurant's cameras linked to our station. I walked in uniform, as the rep slid pre-signed documents across the table. Mind if I join? I asked. His face paled. Misunderstanding, he stammered. There usually is, I said, bagging the folder-forged deeds, fake names, pre-filled dates. You have the right to remain silent. News spread fast. Brenda's empire shook. Emails in the rep's inbox showed her coordinating documents, pushing development, suggesting ways to dodge that stubborn sheriff. Her fingerprints were everywhere. The arrests were public, poetic. As Brenda was cuffed, Clara held a sign. HOA, heaps of arrests. 3 days later, Pine Haven felt lighter, like a house with open windows. Flags weren't perfect, bushes weren't geometric, and neighbors talked without fear. Brenda was in jail, Weston's rep under investigation, and complicit county officials cooperated with reviews. A clerk admitted taking a discounted lot bribe for Phase 3. That plan was dead. The sting footage was gold. The rep had joked, easier to ask forgiveness than permission, especially with sleepy sheriffs. I replayed it, not for the jab, but for their arrogance. They thought landowners would stay quiet, authorities would be bought or lazy. They forgot people care about right. The DA filed indictments, fraud, forgery, misappropriation for Brenda, who'd used HOA dues for her koi pond, cameras, and imported plants. That evening, residents invited me to a porch gathering, no fines, just lemonade and folding chairs. Sarah showed up with a guitar, playing badly but sparking laughter. Kids bounced on a trampoline where Brenda's sign once stood. I helped set it up. My lawyer moved to dissolve the HOA, its foundation illegitimate. Residents could form a voluntary group, but no more fines for wreaths or flamingos. At the courthouse, reporters swarmed. I kept it short. This isn't just about land. It's trust. People give power to groups expecting fairness. When someone like Brenda weaponizes it, vigilance means watching leaders, not neighbors' trash cans. A week later, the new Pine Haven Neighborhood Council sent a letter recognizing my ownership and inviting me to an open meeting about potholes and block parties. I showed up in jeans, just another neighbor. They asked me to speak. I'm proud, I said, not just for the law, but because you stood up. My uncle said land's yours when you walk it, care for it. Clara handed me a plaque, property of Sheriff Harland. Please trespass kindly. I laughed hard. They hung it by the oaks on a bench dubbed Brenda's Timeout. Pine Haven State Houses, people but the control vanished. It was real now, quirks and warmth replacing plastic perfection. A cardboard sign under the entrance read, now accepting common sense. I tipped my hat to folks on their porches. My land was mine, my town had peace, and Brenda? Last I heard, she was pitching an HOA in county jail. Good luck with that.